let's analyze this debate. The host of Facing South Florida, Jim DeFede, is joining us. And Jim, President Trump weighed in early with a one-word tweet. He tweeted the word boring, exclamation point, all caps. You agree with that?
I don't, but it's hard to imagine that the president was ever going to give this debate a positive review.
Okay, so do you believe that any of these candidates helped themselves, and do you believe any of them hurt themselves?
I think that when you look at this, I thought that Elizabeth Warren came out of the gate strong. I think she is showing why she's doing well in the polls and continues to be climbing. But I tell you, the surprise candidate out of this, I would say there were two who really helped themselves. I think Elizabeth Warren helped herself, but the two others who I thought helped themselves was John Delaney, the congressman. I think that, what he showed was that you didn't have to wait for the moderators to go to him. He was willing to sort of come right out of the gate and start talking to people, start interrupting, forcing his way into the conversation, which is exactly what he had to do. I also thought Julian Castro did really well. I thought he hit it out of the park on a couple of questions, particularly when it came to immigration. He has released the only real plan on immigration reform so far, and I think that he did himself well. I'll tell you who disappointed me a bit, Beto O'Rourke. He came across a bit passive, and the others, I think, sensed it and tended to beat up on him and interject themselves into his time, and I thought that was interesting.
And Jim, it seemed like the debate started off slowly, but there was a time where the moderators pulled back. What did you think of that?
That was the best moments of this debate. As somebody who's moderated debates myself, I know that the key is get out of the way as quickly as possible. Let the candidates go at each other. And there were a couple of moments here where I thought the debate really started to make some interesting headlines. And that was on the issue of health care and immigration, but particularly health care. When the moderators just stepped back and let the candidates sort of talk about whether or not they would do away with private health insurance, what that would mean. Some candidates like Elizabeth Warren saying yes, they want a Medicare for all, do away with private health insurance. Other candidates like Delaney, like Beto O'Rourke and others talking about how it was necessary. You need to have sort of an all-of-the-above approach, some health care, from private insurance companies, then also have a safety net, public option. I thought that was really interesting. That was the best part of the debate for me. I thought you heard some real differences in the Democratic Party on this issue, and I think it's going to be one of the driving issues between now and Election Day.
A couple other issues that were discussed at some length, Parkland and climate change, which apply definitely to us here in South Florida.
Yeah, and I got to be honest with you. I sort of felt the Parkland discussion was sort of shoehorned in a way because they were here in South Florida. Parkland is just up the road in Broward, and so I felt they sort of needed to talk about it. I didn't hear anything really new or innovative from any of the candidates talking about how they would do it. All of them had praise, as you heard Amy Klobuchar earlier in Ty's package, talking about the Parkland kids. But I didn't hear a lot new. Same thing with climate change. There was some in the weeds discussion about carbon taxes. This isn't the right forum to try to get into those nitty-gritty details. So I thought those were just more focused because we were here in South Florida.
Were you surprised they didn't mention Joe Biden, who's the front runner?
I got to tell you, Joe Biden may be the winner in just the sense that he did not come up at all. Some people were thinking that the candidates tonight would take shots at Biden because, one, he wasn't on stage to defend himself, and two, being the front runner, that they would want to start differentiating themselves from him. And by the way, what you're looking at right now, that's the fabled spin room. So you've got the different candidates with their supporters trying to convince the press of what they just heard, which I always find is a fascinating sort of thing.
And they got signs for who's spinning for whom.
Oh no, absolutely, yeah. But no. Look, I think one of the things that we can sort of see is what's going to happen tomorrow. If we sort of look ahead to what's going to happen, I think that the takeaway from this debate for all those candidates who are going to be on the stage tomorrow is don't wait for the moderators to call on you. Get more aggressive. I think that what you're going to see is a free-for-all tomorrow with the candidates really going at each other.
Oh, boy.
All right. Well, we'll all be here. Thank you, Jim.
All right, Jim, thanks a lot. And stay with CBS 4 News and CBSMiami.com for continuing coverage of the Democratic presidential debates. The second group of 10 square off tomorrow, and of course, we will be there with